Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at a Hero Games publication that came out early in Champions history, Champions being the flagship that started the whole hero system. It was Adventurers Club. It was a quarterly magazine that wasn't quite quarterly. Had a lot of fun stuff in the pages, and especially in the early 80s, very valuable resource. We're going to take a look at the history of the magazine, and some of the reasons why in the early 80s especially this magazine was so important. So, for your viewing pleasure, Adventurers Club Quarterly. All right, Adventurers Club Quarterly. This started in 1983, went through 95 for a total of 27 issues. And the reason this was so important was there was no internet. So starting in 83, if you were into Champions like I was, and you wanted new ideas and such, you had to wait for modules or rulebooks to come out, and they were not common. What this gave us was a quarterly, you're going to see the air quotes on the word quarterly, a quarterly magazine that would give you some DMing tips and some new powers and different ways to think and look at the game. I enjoyed this magazine quite a bit. I collected the first 10 or so issues very loyally, which was not an easy task. Publication of this was sporadic at best. Distribution of this was sporadic at best. I'm fortunate in that I lived just outside Chicago, one of the major hubs, so people tended to stock most things for gaming in various hobby stores in the area. So I was pretty fortunate to get my hands on several of these issues. Not an altogether easy task. A few others, thanks to our good friends at Half Price, have come along since. So, one thing I do want to note, you've heard me speak of Pat's Hobbies. Price tag right there. Pat's Hobbies. That's where I bought these. Pat's was a good go-to hobby store in the Oak Lawn area back in the 90s through the early 2000s. Actually, 80s through the early 2000s. Pat's actually went back to the 60s in that location, but jumped into the role-playing trend very early and were a great local supplier. I miss you, Pat's. It's a law office now. I'm going to show a couple of these different covers and show what we liked about it. As you can see, it's a pamphlet size. It went later to appropriately a comic book size in the 90s. But I'm going to show a little bit about why, a little bit what was inside here. So, there we go. This is issue number 2. What Rough Beast. That's hard to say. A Scenario for Champions. This was the earliest we had to look at actual scenarios, short scenarios printed for Champions. There wasn't a bunch out there in the early 80s for Champions. The very rare Dragon article on it. And this, Space Gamer would do it once in a while. I honestly don't remember if White Dwarf did Champions or not. If anybody knows, go ahead and comment below. But these were not the easiest things in the world to come by at the time. So, we wanted to look at different things in Champions. So here we are. Terror in the Treasures. Champions scenario. Different agents and teamwork. So it would give you different clues and tips. So basically a typical fanzine. And that was what we needed. The problem was the quarterly publication was not a quarterly publication. It tended to come out whenever they could get the issue out. It made it a little tough to follow, a little tough to be a fan. And I think, honestly, it hurt their distribution and probably hurt Champions in the long run. I'm not faulting anybody. I'm sure there were financial pressures for this, as well as writing. But it would have been nicer if they'd been able to stay more consistent. There's Nova, a Champions scenario. And the Guilt Complex, GILT. This one had an interesting article. I believe it's this one. That had 3 characters based on gold. Let's see, the Guilt Complex. At page 34. I just want to be sure this is the one I'm thinking of. Yes. The idea was, if your heroes know everything and know how tough this guy is and that guy is, and know to use a full power blast on them, well, okay, go ahead. But it turned out that the Guilt Complex, GILT, a little pun there, they all had very low defense. So in Champions, if you blast somebody for 14 die 6, and out of the 14 die 6, you do 46 points of stun, they're if it's a punch, their physical defense gets pulled out of that 46. So if they have a PD, physical defense, of 25, 46 minus 25, 21 points comes off their stun. So the idea behind the guilt complex was these guys all had very low PD and ED. So you blast this guy with that 41 points of stun I was just talking about. He had a 1 PD. You just did 40 stun. In Champions also, the dice have a function called body. Every die you throw for damage, you then count. 1s equals 0 body, 2, 3, 4, 5 equals 1 body, 6 equals 2 body. The idea there is the body is how much you might have, hit them so hard you broke their jaw, whatever. Well, the cool thing about the guilt complex was they had virtually no defenses. So if you hit them, you hurt them, and you hurt them badly. And it was to keep champions on their toes a little bit, to keep them from getting cocky about just powering up their fullest and blasting characters with their biggest powers. The idea was to kind of make them stop and think a bit. So I thought it was a pretty good article. It stayed with me all these years. So I'm going to take a look at the next one. This one has the protective mailing cover. I never subscribed to this. I'm not really sure where I got it from. And now we have Justice Incorporated, which was an early split off. This became Pulp Hero over time. But Justice Incorporated was kind of a pulp game. Lower power, how your characters were going to be more two-fisted adventurers than anything else. Doc Savage, you saw the shirt at the beginning. He was a pulp character. He would be featured in a game like Justice Incorporated or Pulp Hero. Okay, this one. Grasp Incorporated, Adventure for Champions and Danger International. Danger International was a spy game that Hero was running at the time. And basically, think Top Secret or any other spy game for that matter, the James Bond game, anything like that. That was what Danger International was all about. Another Champions adventure in this issue. And then here we go. Hands of the Strangler, Pulp Heroes versus the Golden Gate Strangler. Not my cup of tea. I didn't play Pulp Hero really. Much as I love reading Doc Savage novels, I really never played Pulp Hero. I have it, but I never really played it. And there we go. Death from the Skies. This deals with some space alien adventure in people coming in from outer space to attack the Earth and how your champions have to defend it. Okay, we're up to 1988 now. Issue 11 was fall of 87. Issue 12 was sometime in 88. And this was around the time that Iron Crown was also part of it. That started a few issues earlier. And so we were getting some of their MERP adventures. And we were splitting time in the magazine, which really didn't do it for me. I was buying this for Hero. I had played 1 or 2 Iron Crown games, but that was not what I was buying this magazine for. This issue, which was out in 89, was an attempt to kind of solve that. It was a super duper double issue. And it tried to double down on what it did. It gave us Iron Crown, and it gave us just other stuff that, again, actually, I don't think Iron Crown was still around for this one. This was just an attempt to get the book back. Yeah. So, as you see, they did ads even for Marvel Superheroes, which was probably the biggest competitor. Their own books. So, just a fun magazine. Special hardware issue once we go to comic book size. I liked this scenario in here, Empire Club. Pretty neat. And the last issue I have is issue 18. It went on for several more issues. This one is in the early 90s. It's in Champions 4th edition. This ran 1st through 4th. And by this time, there were a lot more Champion supplements out there. Especially in 4th, we started really seeing an almost flood of quality Champions books. Here's one right here. This has nothing to do with it, but there's just The Ultimate Martial Artist. I got this one from Half Price Books back in a couple of years ago. But by 4th, we were getting a lot more production out of the hero system. There were a lot more lines out there. There were a lot more actual releases for Champions. So Adventures Club was still neat, but it wasn't as necessary as it was in the early to mid 80s. I remember when we first bought these, I played Champions. I had two other players who GM'd Champions as well as I. So we kind of a split universe going on. And we would all buy Adventurers Club, and just like comic books, because all three of us were comic book fans, we'd go ahead and we'd tear into these and start analyzing what it meant here and why we should do things this way and that way. So it was just a great little house magazine to bring you some champion stuff on a somewhat regular basis. I appreciate that they tried to be quarterly. They never really succeeded in it. But I still love Adventurers Club. I pulled these out to do this video, and boy, did I get some nostalgia out of these guys. In the early 80s, early to mid 80s, I lived and died by the latest issues. So if any of you have any fond memories of Adventurers Club or anything that you want to add, please put comments below. And if you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time on page 121.